Welcome back to Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. Why am I back in the prologue, you might be wondering? Well, someone in the comments actually told me that I'd missed a bit of unique dialogue from this chapter. This is what happens if you try and drop Ike's training sword. That's actually pretty cool. I'd never seen that before because, obviously, there's really no way that you'd see this conversation without intentionally trying, because why else would you drop your only weapon on your only character in this chapter? But it's good to see that this chapter has safeguards against being unwinnable, and it makes sense from a character standpoint too. That's actually pretty cool. Is there any dialogue if you unequip it? Nah, Boyd's still saying the same things. You know, that just makes me wonder something. I wonder if in the other prologue chapters in Fire Emblem games, you actually can make things unwinnable by dropping your character's weapons. I guess Lynn's mode on normal doesn't even let you do that, and I wonder what happens on Sacred Stones if you try and drop Erica's rapier. I might actually have to test that sometime. But anyway, we're up to Chapter 3, and as you can tell, we've graduated from fighting bandits, and we're now going to be fighting pirates. It's a slight step up, at least. In this universe, though, they're actually not separate classes. They're all just represented by the generic bandit class. Oh, right, yeah, as of last chapter, it looks like it's discipline time. We ignored orders, even though it probably saved Mist and Rolf's lives. Yeah, admittedly, Titania probably could have handled that situation on her own. Also, Shinnon and Gatrie could have helped. In fact, we're really lucky that Shinnon was there. I like how we're seeing some interesting character moments from Boyd here. He might be, I don't know, a little bit not as smart as the others, but he has a good heart. Although, I love that line. He's like, yeah, I'm going to accept punishment too. Wait a minute. Yeah, that's great. And now everyone's playing the martyr. And so is Oscar. Everyone's at fault, yay! Well, this would be a much more effective punishment if, well, there wasn't going to be a chapter now, and we can't really have any more chapters if we're confined to quarters, so you'll see how this is handled. That is true, but, like I said, Titania and Shinnon probably could have handled that on their own. Still, it was good experience for the new members. So as you can see, our punishment is deferred, and considering how this game ends up going, it's deferred indefinitely. Again, it would be pretty boring if you were stuck not being able to play chapters for a while. But we've actually got a bit of a change in party here. Other than Titania, we've lost everyone. Hello, very blocky model. So this is our generic pirate boss for this chapter. This guy actually has some surprisingly interesting history to him for the Fire Emblem series. I'll talk about that once we actually start fighting him, but let's just say that he has a very, very strange role in one of the Japan-only websites. He's a little more than just a generic boss who only appeared in one chapter. Of course, you wouldn't know that if you don't speak Japanese. So we have to drive away some pirates. Pretty self-explanatory. But now we're going to see Shinnen and Gatrie in action. At least he's directing his arrows towards someone who actually deserves it. And hopefully Gatrie will actually get to do something here. This is kind of cool, I like this explanation. You just do whatever you do. Fight axe users, get a little bit more experience. That's pretty much how this works. Actually, we should rush the ship as soon as possible. You'll see the reason for that once the chapter begins in earnest. Also, I love how you can see the old man NPC walking away there. Except, he seems to have just disappeared. He didn't even go back into his house. Let's go. And we get battle preparations for the first time, which is kind of a weird time to be giving it to us, because as you can see, we have absolutely no choice over who we deploy. Everyone that we have access to is forced. Something about forced deployments in this game though, you can still reposition characters on the map who are forced deployments. This is not the case in Radiant Dawn, which kind of confused me a bit going back to this one after that game. Now, while we don't have access to Oscar, Boyd, and Rice, we can still trade items from their inventories. I know this doesn't really make much sense, but I guess just think of it as they gave us these items before we split up. So let's give that to Titania. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm going to... I want to put one of the bands on Ike, basically, but I'm wondering which one. It's going to be either Shinnen's Archer Band, which he starts with. That raises skill and speed growths by 5%. There's also Gatrie's Knight Band, which raises strength and defense, like you'd probably expect. It's either that or HP and strength. I think at this point, though, I'd like a bit more speed on Ike, and Ike's skill has been kind of getting screwed, so I want to remedy that. Shinnen is not going to be leveling up very much at this point in the game, so he won't be getting much use out of that Archer Band. I'm going to be trading that over. I was going to trade the Speedwing over... Actually, wait, no. Actually, that's fine. I'm not going to be using the Speedwing now. I know that for complete efficiency's sake, you really should be using it now, but I'm not going to because I like saving them for transfer bonuses at the end of the game. I guess while we're on this screen, I can show off Shinnen and Gatrie's profiles. So here's Shinnen.
It's really hard to talk about Shinnen without giving away spoilers, but I'll try. Shinnen is the first bow user we get, and unlike a lot of other Fire Emblems, the first bow user is a pre-promoted sniper. Naturally, Shinnen is very strong for this point in the game. He doubles almost everything, does decent damage, and thanks to being a sniper, he also has plus 15 to his crit rate, so he criticals very often. Interestingly, this critical bonus was added in the English version. Snipers had no particular class features in the Japanese version. So Shinnen kind of got buffed here. Though this buff can be a problem when you just want him to weaken enemies so others can get the kill. Of course, being a sniper, he has the disadvantage of being locked into two ranged weapons, so he can't counterattack enemies up close. Shinnen's main use in the early game though, comes from the skill he starts with, Provoke. This skill makes the AI more likely to target the character. Now, remember that the AI prioritizes attacking enemies who can't counter. Shinnen, being a sniper, can't counter anything at one range, so he was already a magnet for the AI anyway. This skill just makes him an even better magnet. So through this, Shinnen has a lot of utility early on in the game as an excellent lure. Remember that this skill isn't perfect though. If there's someone like, say, Rice, who has incredibly bad defense in the enemy's range, the enemy is still probably going to go for him. Archers are also a little bit less inclined to attack Shinnen despite Provoke, unless they have no other option, because they know they'll be risking counterattacks. But still, Shinnen's luring abilities are not to be underestimated and are very useful early on. which is actually the main thing he's good for. So you might notice that Shinnen has amazing growth rates, some of the best growth rates in the game. However, Shinnen is very unlikely to be leveling up early on due to being a pre-promote, and later on, well, let's just say that his growths won't really see much use there either. In short, don't rely on Shinnen too much.
And here's Gatrie.
Like Shinnen, it's a little hard to talk about Gatrie without giving away spoilers, but I'll try. Gatrie is our first armor knight. The main gimmick of that class is they hit really hard and have massive defense, but are very slow and also vulnerable to magic. They also have terrible movement, which is a deal breaker to a lot of players. Gatrie is very, very typical of armor knights, though a little exaggerated. He has massive strength, defense, and HP, but of course not so much in the speed department. There is an item though that can help Gatrie gain speed, that we'll be getting a little bit later on, but whether or not it's better to give that item to someone else is the real question. Early in the game though, very few things can hurt Gatrie, and because the maps are smaller, his movement isn't as much of an issue. He's also a lot better offensively than you'd probably think. Even though his speed is terrible, early game enemies are weighed down a lot by their weapons, and he has enough strength to avoid being weighed down by most lances, so he actually doubles surprisingly often early in the game. You don't want to get used to that though, because it definitely won't last, but early on, most enemies with steel weapons can be doubled by Gatrie, which is actually pretty useful. Later on though, he can't double much, which means he'll actually be hitting less hard than characters with lower strength but better speed, and the maps get bigger so his movement starts to become a major issue. The main thing that holds him back though is, Gatrie's defense is really overkill. You don't need very much of it in Path of Radiance, as enemies, even the ones later into the game, tend to be quite weak. I personally find a defense stat in the low 20s is fine for the endgame, so Gatrie's is definitely overkill, especially when most of the paladins you get have enough defense, while having much higher movements. There also aren't many maps that require choke pointing in this game, so that's another niche generals feel that isn't so good here. Overall, you don't really need a general later on, so Gatrie likely won't be seeing much use past the early game. Unless you're me, however. I personally really like generals, and because of that, I'm going to use Gatrie just because he is my favourite general in the series.
Now, Shinnen's actually the one with the Thunder affinity, so I guess he should be the Thunder in that pairing. But anyway, let's check the map. Now, this, I believe, is the first chapter where we'll be seeing enemies with hand axes. Yep, that guy's got a hand axe. Now, something kind of cool about this game is that you can differentiate thrown weapons from their normal versions just based on the enemy's map model. So, as you can see here, fighters who have hand axes look a little bit different to fighters who don't have hand axes. So here are the bandits. See, that's a regular axe, and that's a bandit with a hand axe. That's also the boss. He also has this Thief band, which is droppable. That's only on a second playthrough or more, like all the bands. It's the exact same as the Archer band. It raises skill and speed growths by 5%. Now, this is a defeat boss chapter, so it'll end immediately after this guy dies, and he does move, so if you're not careful, this chapter can be over before you've reaped all the experience from it. Okay, who goes where? I kind of like having Shinnen go further forward, but he doesn't really need to be because he has more movement, and Gatrie, he really needs all the head start he can get. In fact, I might swap Gatrie over here. Ike is stuck because, yeah, the main lord usually can't switch their deployment location. And I want to get to here as soon as possible. Even though this doesn't say it's a village, it effectively counts as one. You will get an item for visiting there. You can also save on the battle preparation screen, so I might as well do that so I don't have to go through my intro again if something goes wrong. That should be all. Let's move out. One thing that I want to show quickly that I haven't in any of the earlier chapters, if you press start, you can go to this window, which will show you an overhead view of the map, all of the enemies' positions, the number of allies and enemies, and the conditions of the map. So that's pretty standard for Fire Emblem, but I find it looks pretty cool here. I love the blinking dot that the leaders of each army have. Anyway, so now I'm going to see if I can take out either one of these. Okay, he's doubling with a steel sword, but that's not actually going to mean much. Also, notice how his evasion is quite considerably down with that steel sword compared to the iron. I guess I can have him fight this guy, though. I should be careful where I put Ike, though, because there's somebody that he needs to talk to a little later in this map, so he can't be too far away from the rest of the group. Okay, this guy is kind of a straggler. I might as well try and get rid of him early, even though I don't really want to be using Titania to do so, but oh well. I know this guy's going to cause problems if I leave him around. Because like I said, I want to be rushing to the boat as quickly as I can. For reasons, let's just say. Also, right, let's see. Gatrie actually doubles quite a lot of the enemies here, despite being an Armor Knight, which is interesting. Okay, he can't reach that sword guy right off the bat, so I guess he can just do this. Gatrie doubling things, though, is mainly because they're heavily weighed down by their weapons. Not really because he's fast, though he does have enough strength to avoid being weighed down by a lot of things. Steel Lancers still weigh him down, but yeah. They did raise the weight of a lot of weapons in this game to compensate for the new system, but even then... Yeah, so you only need 13 strength to avoid being weighed down by a steel lance, and yeah, that's not that much strength in the grand scheme of things. So, now I'm going to be making use of an interesting ability he has. Shinnen's going to run right into the middle of this bunch of enemies, yelling, I am an asshole, and they're all going to attack him because he's an asshole. Now, this is the reason why I wanted to rush to the boat, but don't get your hopes up yet. It might look like this character we're just meeting here is recruitable. She's not yet. We still need to rescue her, though. Yes, honest pirate, because, yeah, that totally isn't an oxymoron. I don't think she's going to like where this is going. This line actually confused me a bit, though, when I first played. When I read this, I thought that meant that her brother was dead. He actually isn't, though a lot of people would rather he was. But, yeah, I get that worthless carcass is just pirate talk for useless person, but I feel like they could have chosen a better word there. So, he's actually not dead. They just threw him overboard. I think many people would agree with you there. Yeah, we'll be getting to Marcia's brother later on, and if you haven't met him before, well, that's all I'll say for now. Also, yeah, that line back there, I think this was the first mention of Shanty Pete in the series. This is something really weird that I didn't actually notice until I was looking at the general characters page for the Fire Emblem series on TV Tropes. Also, I get the feeling that that you working off your brother's debt to pirates is probably not a good idea. And yeah, Marcia's pretty awesome. But what I was saying about Shanty Pete is that he seems to have become kind of a recurring character in the series, even though he never physically appears. A lot of pirates mention him in their dialogue, from this game to Shadow Dragon to Awakening. I have a feeling he only exists in the localization, but it's kind of funny that they made a recurring legendary pirate character who never even physically appears. Reminds me a little bit of the, okay, I'm really surprised you didn't go for shit in there, but I guess avoiding counterattacks trumps provoke sometimes. Speaking of avoiding counterattacks, though, yeah, because Shinnen is an archer, and because he has Provoke, things love attacking him in melee range. Provoke is a pretty useful skill early on, though it's going to be a little bit annoying here because it means that a bunch of enemies aren't going to suicide themselves into Titania. You do have to be careful with Provoke that way. But it does mean, like, that hand axe guy who went and attacked Shinnon, he would have attacked Marcia if Shinnon wasn't in range of him. So that's definitely good to know. Shinnon's about to get surrounded, but that's basically how Provoke works. It's also taking a little bit more damage than I would like, but Shinnon is very bulky for an archer, so that's pretty much fine. I will probably need to kill a couple of these enemies, though. I don't want to be totally blocked off from getting to Marcia, so I don't think I've ever seen Marcia die before, but it's definitely not unprecedented if she gets unlucky. And that's exactly why I didn't equip the Steel Sword. She does have a vulnerary, but I do find that if she gets a bit unlucky, like, these enemies have terrible hit rates against her. I say that and she immediately gets hit, but at least that's the guy who has terrible power. But yeah, these pirates, even with weapon triangle advantage, they still don't hit her very often at all. So she can hold her own for a few turns, usually. But you still want to get to her relatively quickly. Like I said, she doesn't actually join in this chapter, but I believe you have to talk to her with Ike in this chapter for her to join later. And you obviously want that, because Marcia's amazing. Oh, that's our first instance of the other phase, by the way. Thankfully, Marcia's not being an idiot. She pretty much stays where she is. Also, here's her stats. Only level 5 Pegasus Knight, but that defense is actually very good for a level 5 Pegasus Knight. No skills or anything like that, and she's just got a slim lance, which means if you're lucky, she might crit some of the enemies here. Like I said, though, I may need to have Ike go a little bit further. Oh, by the way, the turn limit for maximum bonus experience in this chapter is 6, I believe. So you have a bit of leeway. I'm going to have to clear a path for Shinnon here. I normally don't like to have Shinnon fight enemies, but I may have to in this circumstance. And there goes the hand axe guy. You know, if I was a little smarter on turn 1, I probably could have positioned Shinnon in a place where the hand axe guy would have no choice but to attack him from range, and that way, actually, I'm glad that you got that hand axe. But that way, yeah, he'd kill himself in the enemy phase. But anyway, hindsight and all that. Rewatching the footage of Chapter 1 and editing, I realized there were so many things I could have done better, but oh well. Yeah, you might notice that Shinnon has a very, very high crit rate. Of things you might know. Okay, so, yeah. Shinnon has to go all the way up there in order for him to be tricking things with Provoke. But yeah, I'm going to finish this guy off with Shinnon. Snipers didn't actually get a critical bonus in the Japanese version, I've probably already said that, but that's kind of interesting. Swordmasters and Berserkers were the same. All of them have a crit bonus in the English version, but not in the Japanese version. Shinnon could really use one of those right now, actually. Alright. Does Gatrie double? No, he doesn't. Great. No, it doesn't double that guy regardless, so I might as well use whatever has the better hit rate. Or let's see if Ike can finish him off. 14. Yeah. I don't want to forget that village. That will get rid of you. However, let me just quickly check. Okay, one of them is a Myrmidon. And they're probably both going to attack Shinnon anyway. With only 10 attack power to Ike's 7 defense, so he'll take 3, and then you have 15 to Ike's 7 defense, minus 1 because of weapon triangle, so Ike would take 7. Ike's probably safe unless Gatrie misses this guy for some reason. Okay, yeah, I'll have Gatrie do this, then Gatrie will visit the house on his next turn, and then meanwhile Ike will be one space further forward than he would be if I had Ike attack from a different place. I definitely want to show what's in that house. Yeah, I'll go for the Iron Sword still. Yeah, I wonder if attacking a Lord is going to trump Provoke. And, well, there's Ike's first critical, even though it was completely unnecessary. Critical animations like that are pretty common into a lot of classes, just rushing straight through the enemy. Now might be a good time to make... You're running and using a vulnerary, wow. That's a very annoying habit of enemies in this game. Expect them to do that a lot. Whenever they take damage, they'll often run around and use vulneraries, which gets kind of silly later on when they'll take each other's vulneraries and use them, which gets very annoying with droppable vulneraries, and gets even worse in Radiant Dawn when certain NPCs or enemies can actually steal your own character's vulneraries. I hate that so much. I found that out the hard way when I was doing a recent replay of Radiant Dawn. But that's for much later. What I was saying though is, regarding critical animations in this game, every class has 2 different critical animations. One for if the critical kills, and one for if it's a critical that doesn't kill. So if you see the alternate critical animation, you'll know that the enemy survived. Anyway, I'm going to do what I promised and have Gatrie visit this house now. This is the main reason why I wanted to visit this place. Look, it's an NPC with a unique portrait and no name right now. He's totally not going to become important later. Also love the tavern background here. A lot of the backgrounds are pretty awesome in this one. Well, that's pretty cool. And we get an elixir, which, like most Fire Emblem games, fully heals you. I normally like having that on Ike, but yeah, I can stand to have that on Gatrie at this point. Well, unfortunately, Ike's not doing much damage to that guy. Okay. Actually, I should probably have Titania rush in right now. I am slightly worried about Marcia. I'm going to lock in that guy's range because I don't want to end up killing him before I'm ready to end this chapter. Let's get rid of the guy with the hand axe, though, because he has less of a chance of dying to Marcia. In fact, he'll never die to Marcia because she can never counterattack him. And the AI will always prioritize not being able to be counterattacked when they have that option. Usually. Like, again, the case with Provoke is weird. I normally find that that's, you can also trap that guy. I normally find that Archer tends to suicide into Shinnen, so kind of confused he didn't this time. Okay. What do I do here? Yes. Oh, well, I mean, Shinnen's guaranteed to one-round this guy, so I have to leave him for later. Whereas if I don't kill this guy now, then... Well, I was hoping Ike would be able to finish him off, but oh well. Like, I have a train of thought here, but I'm not entirely sure how to express it properly. Basically, like, I know that this guy won't die to Ike on the enemy. Actually, he will die to Ike on the enemy phase. Scratch that. Didn't realize Ike doubled him. Wow, okay. He didn't even need to wait for the enemy phase at all. Ike is just going berserk in this chapter. Please let that be a good sign for his level up. Well, he finally gained skill. I would have appreciated strength from that level up, but that's fine. He's still using his own vulnerary. He's not stealing the bosses or anything. It'd be pretty funny if he did. Okay, yeah, Marcia tends to use her vulnerary now, so I don't need to worry about her that much. But yeah, as you can see, she is at a slight risk of dying. So that's why I want to get to her pretty quickly. And on that note... I don't really need to shove Ike. Or do I? I can actually get Ike into a position to lure that guy if I do. Yeah, see, here's where shoving can be really useful. So if Ike goes here... I only have one use of that vulnerary left, but... I guess I'll give him the elixir after this. And then Shinnen goes up here and shoves him. Ike can now lure this guy. Shoving is just really great in general. It's, like, seriously, shoving has 1,001 uses. I really wish it would be in other Fire Emblem games. I mean, oh, I can't even, well, I mean, of course I can't rescue Marcia because, yeah, cavalry are hard to rescue in this game. Let's see if I can double this guy. You have the exact same HP. Yes, you can. That's mainly because, again, enemies have really terrible strength, so they get weighed down by even iron swords. You really didn't need to do that, but oh well. Because now I'm going to have Ike talk to her. You're at full health and there are no enemies in range of you. I think you're fine. But let's talk to her anyway. No, you are not dying. Now, I've already got rid of most of them. Marcia's a really great character. She's just... I really like Marcia mainly because, she's really different to the normal personality that early game Pegasus Knights tend to have. So yeah, later. It'd be great if she joined now, but unfortunately, yeah, she doesn't. Some people pronounce her name Marcia. I like to say it Marcia. I think that's how it is in Japanese too. So this is our first mention of Benyon as well. And there she goes. Okay, so the boss can go all the way up there. Alright, I'm probably going to have to lure the boss whether I like it or not. Gatrie once again is falling behind. I usually have Ike visit the village and have Gatrie up on the boat by now. I don't want to risk killing this guy before I'm ready to. And as strange as this seems, I'd rather Titania get the kill on this guy than Shinnen. And I'm equipping the hand axe because there's a pirate with a hand axe up there behind, so I want him to at least be able to get counterattacked. Speaking of counter, Titania has not used her counter skill yet. I mean, I would have Shinnen use a vulnerary, but I don't really need to. I also don't want some... Actually, if I put Shinnen here, he'll probably get attacked by the pirate because provoke. But I don't want the boss to be lured into attacking Shinnen because he'll probably get criticaled. Because that's just how things tend to go with, whenever you don't want someone to crit an enemy, they will usually do it. Case in point, I am still sore over Kumagera back in my Fates playthrough. I even used the option, like, for attacking that had the lower chance of screwing me over, but I still got, like, a 5% critical and he died. I think I missed every single route-exclusive capturable boss in those runs, which really annoys me. Oh, right, okay, I can go over here, and I think... Yeah, I don't think he's at much risk of dying. Let's just finish you off. Ike is kind of hogging a lot of the experience, but out of all the characters that I have here, the only other ones that I plan to use on my final team are Titania, and she doesn't get much experience anyway. And... okay, so here is something. I actually do plan to use Gatrie on my final team, but this chapter isn't a very good place to get him a lot of experience, so yeah. If I don't deal with you now, you won't die on the enemy phase because of that hand axe. How much does Titania do with the... Oh, she has no chance of critical. I mean, I might as well do this, although I don't really want to run out the uses of Titania's hand axe that much. Early on in the game, hand axes are actually not that easy to buy. Especially on hard mode. One of the probably only changes on hard mode that I think genuinely makes it any more challenging than it normally is that the shop inventories are quite different on that mode. I'll be talking about that much later, and I might as well actually wait. I mean, you're probably going to... Actually, you're probably not going to go fishing anyway. Anyway, let's just finish you off. Ike's already got a lot of experience. But yeah, I'll talk about the shop stuff later, but let's just say that javelins and hand axes are... like, you have less opportunities to buy them on hard than you do on normal and easy. But now it's finally time to fight the hilariously stereotypical pirate. Well, yeah. However, you'll also live, because I know that she has no chance of critical, and hand axes are kind of weak. Doesn't really stop them from being very powerful. Because yeah, 1 to 2 range has always been pretty broken in the series. And now I can show Ike's unique boss quote against this guy, even though I'm pretty sure I went 1 turn over the turn limit, or is it 7 turns? I can't really keep track of them. Okay, yeah, while this will only consume 1 use of a weapon, if Ike misses, he won't get the kill, whereas this is guaranteed, so I'll go for this. So, I might as well talk about that Fire Emblem history that I wanted to explain with this boss. For some reason... Okay, so firstly, for context, there was a... basically, there was what's called a Fire Emblem Awakening background website. It gave some sides, like, details for the story, things about, like, what Gangrel and Aversa were doing before the final battle in Chapter 12, something involving Tharja, there were, like, a few extra bits of story. Also, this line is hilarious. It also had a brief, like, guide to new players for the early chapters, all the way up to, I think, like, Chapter 9, or maybe even up to Chapter 12. This guide, very weirdly enough, was hosted by Anna and this boss. Yeah, I don't know why they made a generic pirate boss who only appeared in 1 chapter of Path of Radiance a co-host of an Awakening Hint series, but they did. It's really bizarre. His basic job was to be an idiot and have Anna explain things for him. Ike's getting a little screwed in this run. I'm kind of worried about that. And it was, overall, there was some pretty funny dialogue. It also gave some insight into some of the development history of the characters, too. Given how popular Awakening was, I'm really surprised that that website never got translated. I know some people have translated some of these story articles, but I don't think anyone ever translated the Anna and Heverty tutorial dialogue, and it's a shame because it's all really funny. I remember it being pretty funny, so... One day, if I can find that website, I might try and translate bits from it. Anyway, so yeah, that's Heverty. He actually has a little bit of significance in the Japanese fan base, at least slightly. Meanwhile, back in this game... Well, yeah, things would have been even more ridiculously easy if he was. Look at who you're talking to. Also, Gatrie and Shinnen are not children. Well, I mean, not by, I mean, they're not that old. They're like mid-20s, but they're definitely not children. In fact, we'd have even more children here if we had a regular party. Although Oscar is 24, so yeah. And here we have our first hints of, what's to come. This line in particular. This is totally not foreshadowing. The early game of Path of Radiance, at least from a story standpoint, definitely falls into that classic trope of establish the routine, which is chapters 1 to 3, which show the general life of mercenaries, and then have a big inciting incident that changes the routine and forces everyone out of their comfort zone. This dialogue is heavily foreshadowing that that's about to happen very soon. Yes, it's totally not going to come true later. Really? And so for the time being, we're just stuck fighting bandits. Well, I mean, it's pretty true. So Shinnen wants to take on more work, but really only for the challenge. Gatrie, however... He longs for a more glamorous life. Though that's probably because... well, I mean... that, but also the fact that, chicks dig knights. That's probably exactly what's going through his head. I guess he was overhearing a little bit of that conversation. Meanwhile, Shinnen's like, screw that, I'm just gonna be a complete jerk. Admittedly, that makes sense, but still, he can be less of a jerk about it. Something that I want to point... okay, yeah, so I did go over the turn limit by 1, so it is 6 turns, but something that I want to point out about that scene is very different if Shinnen, Gatrie, or both died during that chapter, which can happen. The dialogue is almost completely changed in that case, where basically Ike beats himself up over letting them die, and Titania is like, we're mercenaries, losing people in our line of work is a natural part of it. Something that I really love about this game is the sheer amount of attention to detail in the script. There's a huge amount of dialogue variance in chapters based on who's alive and who isn't. That's something that not a lot of Fire Emblem games do, and it's really awesome in my opinion, and you'll be seeing more of that in the next chapter. Well, you won't be seeing it because I don't think I'll be showing all of the extra dialogue, but I will be talking about the extra dialogue. So anyway, that's that chapter over, and we had hints that the Grail mercenaries are destined for better things. Next time, we have the inciting incident. See you then.